nothing but against the party.
Can I ask you something?
What?
What's forget about it? What is that?
Forget about it. It's like, if you agree with someone, you know, like Raquel Welch is one great piece of ass, forget about it. But then, if you disagree, like a Lincoln is better than a Cadillac, forget about it. You know?
Forget about it. What's up, man? Hold up, let me get these earphones real quick. Make sure the mic.
Shut up, bitch!
Left the platform. So there might be someone posing as me who's blocked you. So
I think it was. Respond to that because Joy Reid, who hosts the Joy Reid show on YouTube, joins me now. Joy Reid, welcome to Uncensored.
Piers, thank you for having me.
Well, we've never met, I don't think. We've never spoken to each other. I think we've locked horns a little bit on social media in the past. I think I'm blocked by you on X. I can't remember what crime I committed, but probably Trump related. Just first of all, what Barack Obama has said and what Chris Cuomo said there, has that given you pause for thought about what the Democrats should now do? Because it's all very well just shrieking constantly about how evil Trump is, but it clearly hasn't worked now twice. You know, the fact that the guy went away for 4 years and then came back and won again was an utter repudiation of the tactics to beat him, wasn't it?
Well, first of all, I'll say I have not blocked you on X Twitter because I haven't been on X Twitter since Elon Musk acquired it. I actually left the platform. So there might be someone posing as me who's blocked you. So
I think it was prior to Elon's purchase.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so this is an interesting conversation because there is no one who is more obsessed with racial identity politics than Donald Trump. He ran the most racial identity politics laden campaign that I've
Shut up, bitch!
seen in my lifetime, and I've been following politics since I was 12. The point of his campaign was, if I was to sum it up, that immigrants, whom he identified as gang members from Venezuela, as people from S-hole countries, as essentially any non-white migrant or immigrant in the country, were vermin who were poisoning the blood of our country.
Well, he was talking about criminal, illegal immigrants. He was talking. Well, hang on. He was talking. You can't miss.
You need the best templates for your videos. Go to Motion Array to get unlimited, easy-to-use templates made by leading designers.
Let me just say something, Joy. I remember when he won in 2016. I was at the New York Knicks the next day with my eldest son, and Chris Rock was there at the next table. We got talking. I said, "Why do you think Trump won?" And he said, "You know why?" He said, "If someone's murdered 8 people, stop going around saying he's murdered 9." And he didn't mean Trump had actually murdered anyone. What he meant was, there's plenty to criticize Trump about. I've done it myself many times. But there's also a lot of stuff that resonates with people. And I think it's the over-exaggeration, the over-demonization of Trump is part of the problem. And your characterization of his depiction of immigrants, you said the word immigrants. Actually, what he was talking about repeatedly on his stump in his rallies was specifically illegal immigrants who come in illegally, who are criminals, who are already convicted criminals who've come into America across the southern border in huge numbers, who are criminals. He wasn't talking about non-criminal immigrants, as you tried to put it there. So there is a difference.
False. No, first of all, it's absolutely false. Let's talk about, for one example, the Haitian immigrants in Ohio. These are people who were in the country on a legitimate visa, who were actually improving that community by taking jobs desperately, where people desperately needed to hire and did not have any, enough American-born employees, and they were hiring these folks. They were taking badly needed jobs. They were improving the community economically. He accused them of eating people's cats and dogs. He characterized them as if they were animals. These are people who his own administration had allowed into the country on a legitimate visa. And
but I agree with you.
First of all, I'll stop. Let me just.
But I agree with you.
So his all-encompassing term about immigrants being vermin and poisoning the blood of the country was all-encompassing because it included them, and in his mind, it included anyone who he said came from an S-hole country, meaning if you came from Nigeria, if you came from the Gabon, if you came from any country in Africa. He in a blanketed way depicted immigrants, again, with Nazi terminology, vermin.
Well, let's leave Nazis out of it. You know what? Whenever people...
And wait, let me finish my
Joy,
thought.
whenever you think it's taken you what? It's taken you 4 minutes and you've called him a Nazi already. Come on.
And now what we're seeing are masked federal agents sweeping up cooks. People who work on farms, picking up dishwashers, any brown person. And Tom Homan said, based on one criteria being their appearance, it's overwhelmingly. And what we're seeing are masked federal agents sweeping up cooks, abuelas, people who work on farms, picking up dishwashers, any brown person. And Tom Homan said, based on one criteria being their appearance, it's overwhelmingly brown and some black. People. We're not seeing them sweeping up white folks on the street. Donald Trump ran a racial identity campaign. And yeah, this is America. That is appealing to, unfortunately, a lot of Americans.
Well, actually, it would turn out to be very appealing to Latino Americans who voted for him in record numbers. More Latinos voted for him than voted for Kamala Harris, the non-white candidate. More Black Americans, African Americans voted for Trump this time round than first time round. So for
Not
this,
true.
for this,
Statistically, it was the same. The same number of Black Republicans voted for him that
more Black Americans voted for Trump
Google
this time than last time.
It was the same. And by the way, this is the other challenge. There is a phenomenon, and my family are immigrants, and there is a phenomenon among immigrants of slamming the door behind themselves. And by the way, more Latinas, women in the Latino community voted for Harris. But there is a phenomenon. If you talk to people who actually are in the community and study this and spend a lot of time on it, journalists who studied it, there are a lot of Latinos who want so badly to identify with Americanness that they identify against fellow immigrants. That is not a new thing.
No, but maybe they weren't identifying. Maybe they weren't identifying. But Joy,
that's not new.
Maybe they were just
blackness. And maybe let me respond to that. The Latino community is not new.
Let me respond to that. Maybe they were just sick and tired of people like you, and I say this respectfully, but people like you constantly calling Trump a Nazi. Maybe they thought it was ridiculous.
Maybe don't call people vermin and say they're poisoning the blood of our country. That's not the terminology. Don't use it.
You have repeatedly, over the last few years, called Trump a Nazi. Now, the Nazis were the most despicable, awful human beings we've seen in 1,000 years. they murdered 12 million people, 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. Trump is not a Nazi. So
And
when you
first
do
of all,
that, you fought it. Let me finish.
Hold
Let me
on.
finish.
You've just done what you normally do. I have said he uses Nazi terminology, and that's a fact.
Right.
Saying people are poisoning the blood of our country, that is Nazi talk. That is what I have said about Trump. I will stand by it, because if you're calling people vermin and saying that they're poisoning the blood of our country, you are lifting language out of the Nazi playbook. That is very different from saying that Donald Trump is perpetrating a Holocaust such as in the 1930s.
Right.
But what he is doing is straight fascism. That's not me saying it. Mark Milley, his former Joint Chiefs of Staff chair, said that he is a fascist to the core. His former chief of staff says he's a fascist. And the things he's doing, masked men snatching people off the street, not even showing any identification as law enforcement.
Let me ask you a question.
Men dragging women,
Let me ask you a question.
children into vans. Fascism.
You've made this point.
Up. I will stand by that any day.
Let me ask you a question about immigration. It's a very interesting topic at the moment, as you rightly observe. So my view, for what it's worth, as somebody who is an exceptional alien is how it's described on my visa to the United States, but I have a home in Los Angeles, and I love America. I've lived and worked there for 20 years. My view is that most Americans, I think instinctively, do not have a problem with the principle of deporting undocumented workers who commit crimes in the United States. Would you have a problem with that as a policy?
As a policy, if people get a hearing and they go through a process, sure. But that is not what's happening.
No, I'm going to come to the next bit.
Hold on, that is not
No,
what's
Joy, I'm going to
happening,
finish
Piers.
my point.
It's not what's happening.
I wanted to see what you were prepared to agree with me about, because I think it's healthy to the debate, right? So we both agree about that, which is good. Now, I don't think that they should have pressed the button on deporting as many illegal immigrants who are there undocumented, not committing in the way that they're currently doing. That they should have sorted, first of all, people who are in the country illegally who commit crimes and deported them. Everyone would agree with it. But I agree with you. The wholesale pulling of people off the street who may have been in America for many years, got families in America who pay taxes in America. You know, you have to talk to farmers to understand the devastating impact this may have. So on that, I would agree with you. But I also think that, and I hope you would agree, that Donald Trump has pretty much stopped completely the number of people coming over the southern border illegally. And under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, over a 4-year period, as many as 10 million people are believed to have come over the southern border illegally. Now, you must surely think that the Trump way of securing the southern border is better for the United States than the Biden way.
Why are teachers so important?
Because without them, you couldn't learn very good.
Yeah, for sure.
They can teach you stuff so you can be smart.
We got to support our teachers, don't we?
Shout out teachers!
Nominate a teacher who's making a difference. First of all, if those are Donald Trump's numbers about how many people came in over the southern border, I don't buy them at all.
What
I don't
numbers do
trust
you buy? People are believed to have come over the southern border illegally. Now, you must surely think that the Trump way of securing the southern border is better for the United States than the Biden way.
First of all, if those are Donald Trump's numbers about how many people came in over the southern border, I don't buy them at all.
What numbers do you buy?
Anything Donald Trump said.
What numbers do
And
you buy?
and let me go on.
Well, how many do you think it was?
Let's just say it was.
Well, Joy,
10
how many
million.
do you think it was?
No, let's just say I'm going to stipulate to you. Let's just say it was 10 million people. Are you asking your viewers to believe that 10 million people were in the country raping and robbing rather than working on farms, working on construction?
No. I didn't say that.
We have to recall that there. So again, being in the United States without documents is a civil offense. It is not a felony. And so the reality is, if it was 10 million people, we have to ask ourselves, America has, like me, on cheap labor, on free labor to start itself as an empire, and then on a constant pull of cheaper and cheaper labor. That is a pull that is pulling people over. And then, of course, there's the push of the destabilization in Central and South American countries. That is the push. That push-pull is a fact of life. And it was a fact of life when Donald Trump was president the first time.
But what's that got to do with how many come over the southern border illegally?
No, the difference is now, if you let's say where you end all undocumented migration to the United States, all that would do is put a burden on the pull part of it, because you have industries that desperately rely on farm labor, on construction labor.
But why shouldn't you have a system?
That's not an
okay, but why? Okay, but Joy, why
freezing it to zero does nothing to change my life.
Joy, why shouldn't people?
What it's done is
why shouldn't people? Let me just ask you, why should? And get accepted to be allowed to come into the United States. That is how a normal, well-controlled border works. So what you seem to be suggesting is that the economy needs a lot of workers. We should simply have a system where anyone can come in. And if that's not your belief, then how would you regulate the southern border?
I'm going to say to you that if the policy were applied the same across the board, that would be one thing. It's not. Marco Rubio's grandfather didn't do it the right way. He overstayed in the country, but Elon Musk's brother has been in a selective enforcement of this outrage. If the person is brown, they need to be rounded up and put into quote unquote alligator Alcatraz, a concentration camp in Florida. If the person is white, we let them start a business and become Elon Musk. What's happening is that Stephen Miller has said he wants 3,000 people a day rounded up, and he wants ICE going into Home Depot. He wants them going on construction sites, going onto farms, and dragging brown people and into detention. they're putting people in private prisons that are unregulated by the federal government. We've heard stories of people eating rotten food, having to use
you
the
still haven't
same
told me
water
what you
they
would
use for
do.
the restroom. And so the reality is what we have right now is we have a system of literal terrorism against brown migrants simply because Stephen Miller does not want them in the country.
As you know, they're not all brown, as you know.
Well,
But
the vast majority are.
well, but you haven't answered my question. Also, if you were running the southern border, if you were in charge, if you were the border czar, what would you do? Would you let them all in, or would you stop some of them coming in?
The first thing that I would do is to look at some of the actual legislation that's been put on the table before. You have a very small number of immigration judges who deal with people who are presenting themselves for asylum, but there are bipartisan, members of Congress, the House and Senate, have tried to pass legislation that would increase the number of those judges. If you actually had enough people to adjudicate asylum cases at the border, it would make Donald Trump did in his first term. First of all, it was horrific, and it was abusive even then to children. But
he was outraged by Barack Obama's deportation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that Barack Obama made some compromises that I do not think were morally sound in order to try to lure
deported in 8 years?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Well, why don't you guess?
I don't know and don't care.
Well,
you
hang
tell
on,
me.
hang on. You don't know and you don't care. You just if you were would you stop some of them coming in?
The first thing that I would do is to look at some of the actual legislation that's been put on the table before. Home Depot. He wants them going on construction sites, going onto farms, and dragging brown people and into detention. They're putting people in private prisons that are unregulated by the federal government. We've heard stories literal terrorism against brown migrants simply because Stephen Miller does not want them in the country.
As you know, they're not all brown, as you know. Well, the southern border, if you were in charge, if you were the border czar, what would you do? Would you let them all in, or would you stop some of them coming in?
The first thing that I would do is to look at some of the actual legislation that's been put on the table before. You have a very small number of immigration judges who deal with people who are presenting themselves for asylum, which, by the way, is perfectly legal. It is legal to present yourself for asylum, but there are scarcely any judges doing that work. Multiple times, bipartisan, members of Congress, the House and Senate, have tried to pass legislation that would increase the number of those judges. If you actually had enough people to adjudicate asylum cases at the border, it would make that easier. I've actually been to the southern border and looked at the process and looked at the previous version of detention that Donald Trump did in his first term. First of all, it was horrific, and it was abusive even then to children.
And were you as outraged by Barack Obama's deportation program?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think that Barack Obama made some compromises that I do not think were morally sound in order to try to lure Republicans into doing the immigration reform.
Do you know how many people he deported?
Since Marco Rubio joined the Gang of Eight.
Do you know how many people Barack Obama deported in 8 years?
I don't know and don't care.
Well, hang on. You don't know and you don't care. You've just given me...
Because it's not the... You're trying to make the issue the southern border.
You've just given me Joy. Joy.
The point is,
Joy. You've just given me Joy.
Was not dragging women.
Joy. Let me finish. You've just
nursing babies apart and taking.
Joy. You've just given me.
I'm sure going to tell me it's your main issue.
You've just given me
but it's not my issue. My main issue is that what we're seeing.
I'm trying to finish my sentence. You've just given me a lengthy monologue attacking Donald Trump's aggressive deportation policy. And I've simply said to you, there was a Democrat, a black Democrat president of the United States for 8 years. I'm simply asking, given that you're obviously all over every detail of the Trump deportation policy, and given you were on the airwaves in America on a daily basis through Obama's tenure, how many people did he deport in 8 years?
I do not know. You'll tell me, I'm sure.
Have a guess.
But it's probably more than 1 million people. I'm quite certain.
Have a guess.
I think each 2 million.
Right. It was 3 million.
Okay. And your point being what?
My point being, are you as shocked by that as you...
Raising the next generation is a big job. Being that should delicious.
It is not deportation.
Many of them were brown. Yeah.
Number two,
That's why he came
deporting
back.
people with deporting. Well, that's only one person. They
Okay.
deported more
But
than
the case you're
200
talking
people
about, he's come back.
to that gulag. Yes, but they deported more than 200 people, 70% of whom CBS has determined had no criminal record
But why
whatsoever.
are you changing the subject
that's
from
number
Obama's
one.
deportation
No.
policy?
I'm telling you, the three things that are shocking are not deportations themselves. It's deporting people. It's not done by George W. Bush. All right. Third, one, it is not deportation to render someone to
958 1000. The majority were brown.
One moment. It is not deportation in and of itself that is what is shocking to people. There are two things that are shocking. Number one, well, I'll do three. One, it is not deportation to render someone to a third-party country they have no connection to.
I agree.
Rendering people to El Salvador is shocking.
And that's why he's come back.
That was not done by Biden.
That's why that guy's come back.
Done by George W. Bush. All right. So that is shocking.
Yeah.
I
agree.
Rendering people to El Salvador is shocking.
And that's why he's come back.
That was not done by Biden.
That's why that guy's come back.
Done by George W. Bush. All right. So that is shocking.
Yeah.
Number two,
that's why he came back.
People with deporting. Well, that's only one person. They deported more than 200
the case you're talking about, he's come back
to that gulag. Yes, but they deported more than 200 people, 70% of whom CBS has determined had no criminal record whatsoever.
But why are you changing the subject from Obama's deportation policy?
I'm telling you, the three things that are shocking are not deportations themselves. It's deporting people, number one, to third-party countries like the Sudan, where they have no ties whatsoever, simply for the cruelty of doing it, essentially paying third-party countries.
I asked you about your response to Obama. Obama deported more people than any president in American history.
If someone receives, Piers, my family are immigrants. If there's a deportation process. At the end of that adjudication, you are deemed to be deportable and need to be
But
deported.
you're missing my point, Joy. Boy, I'm trying
shocking.
I'm trying
So
to politely
Barack
ask
Obama
you,
having a
do you
process
condemn?
is different from what we're seeing now.
But here's my point. In the interest of fairness, do you condemn Barack Obama's deportation policy, given that he deported more people? Let me finish. More people than any American president in history. In his 8
What
years.
an absolutely disingenuous argument,
Wow.
Piers. Because what people are yes. No, I'm gonna explain it if you'll allow me.
You didn't even know how many he deported.
It is disingenuous because I just said that, first of all, I think it was a moral compromise that I disagree with. Vehemently that Barack Obama made to try to lure Republicans who were never going to really come to the table for immigration reform. I disagree with what he did. But if there's a process for deportation, that's one thing. Okay. If you are rendering people with no process, if you are rendering them to third parties, and if you are kidnapping them off the streets, if this is 1930s Germany or South Africa in the 1980s, yeah, that is what I find objectionable and I find fundamentally fascist and will stand by that every day. What Donald Trump is doing is a moral...
Auto insurance rates? horror.
I hear you.
And if you can't see that, I don't know what to tell you.
I hear you. All I'll tell you is that Obama deported a hell of a lot more people than Trump.
The issue. The issue
and most of them were brown. And last time I checked, Barack Obama isn't white. So it's not may not be
and
a
what does
race
that have
thing
to
in the
do
way
with Barack
you're
Obama being black?
telling me.
Now you're the one obsessed with race. You want to make this a racial argument. The argument is that the Obama administration.
You made it a
The
racial
Biden
argument.
administration, because Donald Trump fixates
You said
on
Trump
attacking black
is
people,
deporting
attacking
people based
brown
on their skin color.
Well, it is what he does. He
Right,
plays
so
racial
did
politics
Obama.
as a matter of course. It is
Obama
what
did
his
it
politics
too.
are about.
Any worse.
It's what his politics were all about. His
Okay.
politics are about removing as many non-white people clearly from the country as they can. 3,000. A
And
day.
that's what
That
Obama's
is
policy was
apparently
too.
the policy here.
That's what Obama's
apparently
policy
the
was
policy.
too.
No, it was not. And there was
as we
no
sit here,
rendering of people.
as we sit
there was
here,
a process for deportation.
as we sit here,
and you know that it's materially
as
different.
we sit here, Obama deported more people pro rata per year than Trump has
How
ever
many
done.
did he
Than
render
Trump
to
has
a
ever
third
done.
party?
Trump has
How
ever
many
done.
did he render to a third party?
I'll get-
Because what he's also doing
You're
is
outraged
using
by
the
Trump, but
cruelty
you're
of the
not outraged by
I'm
Obama.
absolutely outraged by fascism and by
Sure,
snatching
but
people
Obama
off the
wasn't a
streets.
fascist
No
because
process.
he's
and
not.
absolutely,
Yeah,
I'm
and because
outraged by it.
Obama's got
Absolutely.
brown skin, he's not a fascist. Is that your policy?
Well, that's your simplistic, racialized way of looking
Actually,
at it.
it's
Because that
yours.
is what you're doing on this show.
It's yours
of
about
course
Trump.
it is. No,
But
mine is
let's
about
move on.
fascism.
I want to
and
move on.
Donald Trump is
I
acting
don't
like
want to
Idi
spend the
Amin.
whole
I'll
time
give you
talking
the
about
black
this.
person that behaves the way he does, trying to take people's citizenship away, denaturalizing. That's Idi Amin behavior. There's
Okay.
a black fascist that you can compare it to.
Okay, let's move on to. I want to just play a clip of when you lost your job
citizenship away, denaturalizing. That's Idi Amin behavior. There's a black fascist that you can compare him to.
Okay, let's move on to, I want to just play a clip of when you lost your job at MSNBC. Let's watch this.
My show had value, and that, I'm sorry, that that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And whether it's talking about any of these issues, and yes, whether it's talking about Gaza and the fact that we as the American people have a right to object, to little babies being bombed. And I am not sorry that I stood up for those things, because those things are of God. And you know, I'm a church girl too, and those are the things that I was taught were of God. And so I'm not sorry. I'm just proud of my show.
Now, look, you're perfectly entitled to be proud of your show. Many people enjoyed your show for many years. You know, a lot of people at NBC were briefing that the reason was declining ratings post the election, the 47% decrease in your election, in ratings from pre-election. But you told Mark Lamont Hill on his show this.
After I said on my show that the reason Americans could relate to Ukrainians in a way that they didn't relate to Palestinians, that Ukrainians are white. And so watching white people get their schools bombed was, you know, hit different. That hit our ratings. I mean, it definitely, we could see the loss of white viewers from that moment that I said that. So they were like, we don't like the name calling. And also I'm a black woman. So, I mean, I'm sure it makes him angrier, you know, when I say things. Maybe because I am a global South person myself, you know, I mean, as a black person, we have a different empathy toward other global South people when they are suffering. And so we're going to come at that story from a different angle and in a different way and with different kinds of empathies. And I think that's not always received very well in the news business.
Now, Joy, I mean, look, let's be honest. I don't think you were fired after all those years because of your skin color or because you're a black woman. I think you were fired because your show just got increasingly unpopular. It happens all the time in TV. That's why you got let go. Why play the race card?
First of all, I love the fact that your play the race card is your version of the race card. You literally are so fixated on trying to racialize conversations with me, Piers.
Got let go. Why play the race card?
First of all, I love the fact that your play the race card is your version of the race card. You literally are so fixated on trying to racialize conversations with me, Piers. I find it actually quite charming.
You racialize more conversations in your tenure at MSNBC than any host in history.
All right, Mark. All right, Piers. And the bottom line is you take an entire conversation that I had with Mark Lamont Hill and pick the bits that you can racialize because this is your shtick. And I get that this is your shtick.
You racialize everything, Joy. Come on.
I get it. I understand this is your shtick, Piers. And listen, game recognized game. I get this is
it's
your
not
game.
my shtick.
And the bottom line,
it was your shtick.
It is your shtick. And everyone knows that it is. Piers, we understand what it is. And it is so interesting to me that you yourself, as a white European, find that when people of color talk about race, that you believe is racializing conversations. But when people like you fixate on, well, Barack Obama was a black president. Why don't you object to that? That is racializing a conversation about the former president of the United States. But you can't put your, and I'm sure you find that charming. And funny.
I find it hilarious because you're the one. You're the one who said you're the one who said Donald Trump.
You and your friend Donald Trump.
You said Donald Trump is a white fascist.
So he is a well. I agree
and
with
yet
Mark
when Obama
Milley,
did the same thing,
last I checked, is
I'm not allowed
black.
to mention his skin.
I agree. Former chief of staff, Black was not black, and said he's fascist. And Mark Milley said he's fascist to the core.
Okay.
So I happen to agree, and I know this is what it's important to you, with two very white gentlemen about Donald Trump's fascist tendencies.
Okay.
If that makes you sad and uncomfortable, I can't help you. Piers.
No, it doesn't
There's
make me
nothing
sad
I
and
can do about
uncomfortable.
it.
I think it makes you a little bit of a hypocrite, but that's different. Now, President Trump reacted to your departure by saying, low-life chairman of Comcast, Brian Roberts, the owner of ratings-challenged NBC and MSNBC, has finally gotten the nerve up to fire one of the least talented people in television, the mentally obnoxious racist Joy Reid, based on her ratings, which were virtually non-existent, should have been canned long ago, along with everyone else who works there. What's your response to that?
If you, I mean, it's fascinating to me that you think it's important that I care what Donald Trump says about me. It's a badge of honor. If he dislikes me, then I think I'm doing something right. I have zero respect for Donald Trump, and therefore, if he feels the same way about me, then the feelings are quite mutual, and I'm very, very proud of that and happy with it.
Okay. I want to play a clip. This is you talking about, you attacking parents who spoke out about their concerns about gay and paedophilia pornography books being placed in school libraries.
The question I'm asking is, what is the expertise that you have and other Moms for Liberty advocates have to decide that a book, an award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue, isn't appropriate for students to read? What is your expertise?
What a tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family member. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so I'm going to answer
Please
for you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school? Just I mean, that's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
No, wait, we're talking about public school.
One moment.
All right.
Now, there's also a second clip. This is you talking about Republicans exploiting concerns by minors who identify as transgender. And you said this is an old age tradition which Nazi Germany did. Let's take a look.
In fact, there are more kids who have been exposed to gun violence, estimated at 3 million, than there are transgender Americans of all ages in total. Targeting trans people isn't new. It is an age-old tradition, which Nazi Germany did with brutally violent ends in the 1930s.
Now, the confusing part of all this, Joy, is what you really think.
My dearest Julia, you are my reason for enduring this madness.
Do not give up. I'll find a way back to you.
right? Because as you know, when you started commentating about this, appearing to be a big ally, a lot of stuff emerged which came from posts that you had purportedly put up in a blog between 2007 and 2009, one of which said, most straight people cringe at the sight of two men kissing. Another said, I don't want to watch the two male characters in Brokeback Mountain. You were talking about having sex. Does that make me homophobic? Probably. You referred to the then Florida governor as Miss Charlie and featured the tag gay politicians. Now, you said at the time when all this emerged, I genuinely don't believe I wrote those hateful things because they're completely alien to me. I hired cybersecurity experts to see if somebody manipulated my words or my former blog. And the reality is they've not grown, doing your own thing, and you don't have to worry about repercussions and stuff. Are you prepared to finally come clean and just admit that was your blog and you did say those things?
You know, Piers, I might have known that you would use this opportunity and interview and that this was your purpose, right? This is your purpose. And that's fine. This is your show and you can do whatever you like. You know, I could sit here and go on and fight with you about your strange, weird obsession with Meghan Markle, but I won't do that because that would be rude. But what I will say
if you want
is,
to.
we can do that as well.
Sure.
But the point being that I was very open with my employer at the time about what happened with that old site, which I stopped writing in, you know, before I even came back into the NBC family. And what I have not really talked about publicly, but what I can tell you is that I had a very legitimate reason for being concerned about it because I was also on the radio at that time. And the things that I was literally talking about on the radio were quite the opposite of the things that were in that site. That is the reason that we began investigating what was going on with that site. And there was also someone who I do not know, who I still do not know, who had login access to my site for years that we did not even discover because I hadn't looked at the site for years. I don't know who that is. I don't know why they had access to the site, but had I not been open about that, I would have been definitely fired or you know, there would have been some repercussions. I was open with my company about that. I've been very open. Everyone who knows me knows about it. And so if you want to argue with me about an old blog site, that's fine. And I'll take
I just asked you if you did write it.
And hold on. And I'm willing to take responsibility for anything that was on that site.
Did you? You say
how
them?
For you?
Did you
but
say
hold
those
on,
things?
wait. Not to my listen. What I'm
Come
going
on,
to say
Joy.
is very simply
You said
this.
them.
What I'm going to say is
Come
very
on,
simply
you said
this
them.
Here.
You know you
The
did.
point that you're attempting
You
to
just
make
spun me an absolute
No,
load of
hold on
old
a second.
flannel.
The reason that you are trying to go here is that you're trying to defend the idea that for liberty origins can take books that are not pornography. That are pornographic,
No, I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to ask you
myself to account for
questions
that,
about
and I
you being held to
apologize for
account.
everything that was in that site, and I took responsibility for everything that was in that site, and I still take responsibility for everything that was in that site. I find anything that harms the LGBTQ community that was in that site repugnant. I apologize for it. I take full responsibility for it. But the point that I made in my conversation with the woman from Moms for Liberty is that they are making themselves the expert on books, which they are deeming pornographic by using a site called booklooks.com, looking for words in the in the book that make them uncomfortable, and then attempting to ban books by the hundreds.
And out of interest,
Books that
okay,
are
but
known
just to be clear,
classics.
okay, just to be clear.
And so I asked her,
Do
I
you
think, what is a
think? Do you
legitimate
think
question?
books? All right. Do you think school children at school should have access to books in their library which involve strap-on dildos?
Again, you're taking a book that has multiple subjects and you're taking this award-winning book and dumbing it down to
I just
that,
asked you a simple
because you
question.
may feel uncomfortable. And the bottom line is, these books that were published by publishers who had an opportunity to say no, looked at these books. These are award-winning books. And I think parents should have the opportunity to opt their children out if they don't feel comfortable reading those books. But that children who are old enough and who are of age and can choose the books they want to read and may feel seen in a book that you might object to ought to have the opportunity to read that book. That shouldn't be your decision. It shouldn't be Moms for Liberty's decision. I think each parent can make the decision for their own children. And I don't think that woman from Moms for Liberty or her organization should make that decision for other people's children. People ought to make decisions for their own children. And by the way, one more thing I'll add. Is that in the state of Florida, parents can opt their children out of reading books that they don't want to read.
All right, let me ask you.
She could have done that like any other parent.
Have you watched Brokeback Mountain?
No.
Okay. I mean,
and what is the point of that?
Well, because you said I don't want to watch the two male characters in Brokeback Mountain having sex.
Okay, so what does me watching Brokeback Mountain have to do with that book, whether or not it is pornographic?
No, nothing to do with the book.
That book,
that
is a book that people can have the opportunity to read if they so choose.
No, I'm not talking about the book.
I do not understand how an organization
I'm not talking about the book.
Can make a decision. It is not about the movie. It is about whether or not Moms for Liberty.
I'm not talking about the book.
The organization who should make decisions for other people's children.
I'm not talking about the book,
Whether
as you know.
I watched a movie or not makes absolutely no difference.
I'm talking about you posting on your blog that you wouldn't watch Brokeback Mountain because you don't want to see two male characters having sex. Does that make me homophobic? Probably. Most straight people cringe at the sight of two men kissing. Your words, not mine, Joy.
And your point is?
That maybe that makes you a bit of a hypocrite when you're taking the position of being an ally for the LGBTQ community. And actually, the best way to handle it, I would argue, is just to say, you know what? Actually, I did write that at the time. They're not my views now. I've learned, I've evolved, I've moved on. Trying to pretend even now that you didn't write it is preposterous. And I think you know that.
The bottom line is what I've said, and I will say it again, is that I take full responsibility for everything that was on that site. I'm deeply apologetic for the things that were on that site that hurt people, and I take responsibility for it because it was my site. And that's the end of that. And my views, as you know, and as I've said on television, on air, are quite different from the views that you just read. And that's the end of that.
Okay. Let's just end with this. Not everyone was upset when you were fired. Plenty of those white conservative men that you like so much seem quite happy. Let's just take a look at this clip.
You know when you get distracted by a fluffy little dog rocking the same necklace as you? Then suddenly, you've overdrafted. With Cash App, you're good. Get free overdraft coverage when you direct deposit at least $300 each month.
Joy Reid figure on MSNBC.
I'm quite happy. Let's just take a look at this clip.
Joy Reid, probably the nastiest figure on MSNBC. The most left, the most vicious against conservatives and white people and men and all the rest. She has just been canned, fired, kicked to the side of the road. Her show is over. This saddens me a little bit because I did not yet have the opportunity to go on it. I am celebrating that there is no longer a market for her disgusting product. That's what I'm genuinely happy about. There has been a major shift. Her show and shows like her show no longer have value. And that's not just because of Joy Reid's favorite villains, you know, the evil white man or the Christians or the conservatives. It's because like no one watches her show.
So Joy, I've actually got Michael Knowles waiting in the wings.
Great.
Is there anything you'd like to say to him?
No.
What did you make of his critique of your show?
Well, I mean, the reality is that obviously people watched the show, and obviously that's the reason that the show was on for 4.5, nearly 5 years. So if he didn't like the show, I guess, sorry you didn't enjoy it, but I really am not that interested in his views on it.
Okay, well, we've got Michael there. Michael, anything you want to say to Joy?
Yes, wonderful to be here, Joy. Very nice to meet you. And I guess
To Joy?
yes, wonderful to be here, Joy. Very nice to meet you. And I guess I would agree with Joy's take. People watched the show in the past tense, and now there's no longer a market for that absolutely vile content. And I think that's good for the culture broadly. And now we can all chat on Pierce's show.
Joy?
The reality is, Michael, the content that you and Piers like to trade in is grievance. And the grievance that white Americans have that they have to deal with.
I'm not American.
Diversity that they have to deal
Joy,
with. You
this
just said
isn't
you
a
have a home in
grievance.
mind,
I'm British.
you love
I'm
America.
celebrating.
And by the way, white grievance is very good for your bottom lines. It's very good for your bank accounts. And so having me here to be able to continue to traffic in that is your shtick. That is what you
first
do.
of all,
That's
Joy,
what you do, Piers.
I have
And
to
so
correct you.
it's great. And I'm sure you find it delightful and fun to say it. But the reality is, Piers, that is what you all traffic in.
I
It is
have
what
to correct
Fox
you.
traffics.
First of all, I'm not a white American. I think as my accent may reveal.
Well, I know that you're European.
And I'm a tan
I'm
American,
British.
Joy. My only grievances are
And
tan
secondly, I
grievances.
don't think
I'm not
anyone, Michael, I will let you respond, but I don't think any host in the history of cable news has waged more grievance than Joy Reid. So the idea that you're now hectoring us about feeling aggrieved about things, you spent years being aggrieved about absolutely everything.
Excuse me, but your favorite president, the president who you completely support, is nothing but
My
grievance.
favorite president was Abraham Lincoln.
Was grievance. His entire campaign was grievance. Well, your former boss on The
I'm not
Apprentice, or
Donald
whatever
Trump.
you want to call him, your friend. The bottom line is that Donald Trump's entire campaign was about grievance. It was about white America feeling they'd lost their country and they need to take it back. It was about white America feeling that diversity was a threat to their children being able to go to Harvard. Their
and you know what, Joy? In the end,
diversity. And that is the reason
and in the end,
that you all glom onto him
and in the end,
use him to further your own
actually, in the end, most Americans, as you know, most Americans, having voted for him in 2016, and after Trump spent 4 years in the wilderness, and we watched the Democrats run the United States of America, people took a look at that in America, and then they voted for Trump second time round in bigger numbers, including a record number of Latinos, who last time I checked were not white. Anyway, Joy Reid, I'm going to leave it with you. Thank you for coming on Uncensored. Next time, I'm sure we can move on from the stuff we've talked about today and have a more current debate, perhaps, about other issues. But I appreciate you coming on and facing the music. And it's good to see you. Thank you very much. Well, let me come. I've got Michael and Nina Turner. Nina, you were, well, fair to say, looking quite aggrieved, ironically. About what you were hearing there. What would you like to say?
Piers, I mean, my God, the way you were coming at Joy, she handled it beautifully, though. I think her...
Was I unfair? I mean, did I say anything?
Yeah, Piers, you were. And
in
it was also unfair
way?
for me to be popping up on the screen like this at the last minute on this topic. So I just want your audience to know I didn't get any warning that I was just going to pop up here while you guys were talking. In that way. Yeah, just unfair. I mean, I feel like you were beating a dead horse, but Joey handled it. She handled it.
Is she a dead horse? Wow.
He was just reading her words back to her, wasn't he?
The topic,
you calling Joy a dead horse?
No, I am not. I'm talking about the topic. You kept going back and forth on this over and over again. She said they did an investigation.
You don't believe her, Nina. Come on. Nobody does. Nobody believes it. Of course she wrote that stuff in her blog.
I'm just telling you. I found it to be unfair. Okay,
so come off it, Nina.
But let's talk about. Oh, come on. Let's talk about what you brought me on here to talk about.
All right. Well, let's talk to Michael quickly first. So, Michael, I mean, it's quite illuminating, the conversation with Joy. I don't think it gets Joy. I never met her. She blocked me on Twitter ages ago, but I don't know what for. Probably for saying something complimentary about Trump, who she views as a Nazi. But that in itself is part of the problem with the Democrats now, is that the constant thing of the only way to tackle Trump is to try and persuade everyone he's a Nazi, he's a fascist, he's this, that. It just doesn't play anymore. It's not how most Americans see Trump. And the Democrats don't seem to have learned that lesson. They've got people like Obama and Clinton and Chris Cuomo and others who are trying to urge some common sense to come into this. I believe, I've written a book called Woke is Dead, coming out towards the end of the year, which I think is perfectly timed, because I really feel the world has just woken up and gone, we're done with this crap. We're just... We're just not having it anymore.
Certainly. I mean, I think in that last little segment there, it was total projection from Joy when she's talking about this anger, this grievance. You know, I think, frankly, Piers, I think you and I are two of the least aggrieved people in the entire media. Generally, pretty chipper, cheery people. So, you know, obviously the left has been pushing this grievance kind of politics for a long time. Trump, by the way, when he was asked if he was going to take revenge on his enemies, he said, no, success is going to be my revenge. We're going to move on. We're going to make America great again for all sorts of different people. And of course, he did bring on a lot of people, many more than just white people, to his coalition. Record number, 46% of Hispanics, 1 in 5 black men to come over and vote, 40% of women under the age of 30. So he built a very large coalition here. And this is what I think Obama is so worried about, because Obama was one of the big promoters of proto-wokeness. It was Barack Obama who lit up that White House in rainbow colors.